Did AK miss again? That's a question all Chicago Bulls fans are asking in regards to Usman Deng and the 2 games he's had with the Milwaukee Bucks so far. He's lighting it up in Milwaukee, and Bulls fans are asking, why didn't we keep the young 22-year-old that had upside over trading him for 28-year-old Nick Richards? We're going to talk a little bit about that. The Chicago Bulls are officially out of the play-in as of right now, and the tank is working. If that's actually what they're planning on doing, we're going to talk about what needs to happen next season and in this offseason, which is to say, for the moves that the Bulls made at the deadline to be considered a win. We're going to talk about all that and more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize. But more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content today, y'all. And let's start it off with what we said in the intro. Did AK miss again with Ousmane Dieng? That is what all Bulls fans are asking. In 2 games with the Milwaukee Bucks, he's averaging 18 points per game, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 blocks, and half a steal per game over that time. He's shooting the ball as well, over 50% from the field and over 50% from 3 over that time as well. He's looking like the exact type of young, versatile wing that you want to take a shot on. And it's led many Bulls fans to ask reasonably, why the hell did we trade somebody with that much upside who was originally drafted in the lottery for Nick Richards? Now, and the literal answer to that, right, was that the Bulls, after the trade, when dust was settling on the trade deadline, they know they needed more size. We were left with a roster before the trade for Nick Richards that had no center on the roster at all. Of course, we had acquired Guerschon Yabusele, who has played some small ball center for us, but he's more of a natural forward. We of course had Zach Collins on the roster still, but it's looking like Zach Collins has a pretty good chance to be shut down the rest of the way for the season. And Jalen Smith, who can play center for us as well, has been better at the 4 for the Chicago Bulls this season, next to Buzelis, than at the 5. And so that is why the Bulls did it. Just the baseline reasons that they wanted to add some size. But that's where the short-sightedness could come in at. Right now, I want to be clear here. So far, it's been 2 games for Ousmane Dieng, and it could just be 2 hot games for a young player that got moved, is finally getting an opportunity, has a little bit of fire lit up under him. It could just be that. We've seen that happen before. He can fade away completely into the background. Like, hell, G.G. Jackson, look at his rookie year. What has he done since then, right? And a lot of Bulls fans are saying we should have got G.G. Jackson. So I'm just saying that I get it, and all your thoughts are valid. I'm not saying that, hey, Bulls fans, stop tripping. It could, it's only 2 games. No, I mean, listen. When you are heading into clearly a season where the rest of the way of the season, wins and losses don't matter, the thing that you could sell us on is, hey, we're trying to see which one of these young guys can bring something. And as it stands right now, Ousmane Dieng would look like a really good forward next to Buzelis out there. Add some legitimate size with his 6'8" height and some ability to stretch the floor. Could be wonderful for the Bulls. But they went after what they needed at that point. But then you have to question, all right, why are you so much worried about need for a roster that you're clearly showing us through your actions so far that the plan is to lose a lot the rest of the way? You could have literally got away with playing Lachlan Albrecht as your small ball center, giving him some time and some burn, and then at that point, you're truly developing. You got young, your rookie Lachlan Albrecht, you got 22-year-old Ousmane Deng, you got 23-year-old Jaden Ivey, you got Buzelis at 21 years old, he's still developing, and 21-year-old Rob Dillingham. And then you can sell us on, listen, the rest of the way, we want to see which of these young guys look like potential fits going forward. But as it stands now, it looks like you passed up on a young up-and-coming player to get a 28-year-old backup center who's going to be a career backup, and while a solid backup, that's bringing something that we have not had on this team for a while with some solid, tough athleticism at that 5 position. It does look like a bit of a miss there, and that's just the reality of it. You passed on Deng's upside. And it's in an era where you're telling us that you want young players with experience. You're trying to sell us on upside with Ivy. You're trying to do that. You're trying to sell us on upside with Rob Dillingham. Why not add a young, versatile forward to that, especially when you were already extremely guard heavy on top of all of that, right? And that's what you get down to when you get into that one. Especially when you look at what you got for Deng as well in that trade. Like it's a question in regards to why that's happening. So the Bulls, who needed size, they prioritized Richards over Deng, despite the 6 years in age gap between the two. And as it stands right now, hey, listen, it looks like that was going to be another miss by AK. And that's the thing. It's the upside potential there versus what the floor of Nick Richards. Now, I've been somebody that I've said multiple times, AK needs to consider the floor of players when he's drafting. Not for you could have gotten Nick Richards in the offseason. Even if you do re-sign Nick Richards to a very reasonable contract, you could have got him in the offseason, right? Now, with that said, the Bulls did draft Noah Essengay, who's not playing right now. And maybe there was some thought process in the redundancy between Modest Buzelis, Noah Essengay, and Ousmane Deng. At that point, are you locking yourself too much in to that being your forward combo? Maybe, right? And to credit as well, 4 years into Usman Deng's career, and he it's been more of a thought of who he could be than what you've actually seen from him on the basketball court. I want to be clear there. And so, it's 4 years in, so that's a lot of time. But at the same time, he's a very young, very raw prospect. But I'll say this too. A lot of you guys, admittedly, you won't admit it now because of how good Deng's looked, you would have literally said, oh, here we go. It's P. Will 2.0. We're taking a shot on another guy, 6'8", who hasn't shown anything. Oh, my God. Like, a lot of you guys would have been complaining about that. And the thing that I always have a problem with is how some, and I'm not saying all, some Bulls fans want to complain on either end. You'll complain one way, and then if that way doesn't end up working, you'll complain on the other side too. And, you got to take your shot. You got to take your chance. But this does look like a huge oversight by AK in this case. Former lottery pick was Ousmane Deng, just like Rob Dillingham. And Deng, you could say the same thing about both of them. Of course, Dillingham's only a year and 2/3 into his career, whereas Ousmane has been in there 4 years. But everything you can say about Rob Dillingham, you can say about Ousmane Deng too. He was drafted to a team that quickly became a championship contender. They had better players ahead of them. They were prioritizing their development even before they were competing for championships. And he's never really got a true opportunity to be out on the floor, make mistakes, all that type of stuff. And you could be selling us on a forward guard pairing in Rob Dillingham and Ousmane Deng, who at minimum could be your bench players next year, depending on what you do with your roster. So that's the reality of it. And that's where it comes down to. He's only played in 2 games for the Orlando Magic. So let's just say it's 2 games in that time. But when you look at the shooting that he's had, the way he shot the ball from 3 so far, on at 60% from the field, over 50% from the 3, at the end of the day, this is still a risk that the Chicago Bulls did not take in a time where they should be taking risk and not playing it safe. Acquiring Nick Richards was the safe play. And this is not a knock on Nick Richards' play. Nick Richards is who he is as a player, and it is what it is there. But you did not take the shot on the young guy. And that's the question that you have there. Now, for what it's worth, Nick Richards is averaging 11 points, 5.7 rebounds, 1.7 blocks across his 3 games so far for the Chicago Bulls. So the question isn't the floor, it's the ceiling. You missed the opportunity to take a guy on a high ceiling, and that's just what it comes down to. Now, maybe a part that played into that as well is maybe the Bulls thought that the forward that they were going to get was Jeremy Sochan, who, by the way, Jeremy Sochan decided to sign with the New York Knicks, not with the Chicago Bulls. Perfect example of why do not let trade deadline speculation start becoming your opinion. I can't tell you how many people I saw say that, oh my God, we absolutely need Jeremy Sochan because that was the rumor. But, he went out with the New York Knicks, did not sign for the Chicago Bulls, and he's going to a team that is, he's basically going to be replacing Gershon Yabusele there. That's basically what he's going to be doing. So, we'll see what he can end up doing. Best believe they're going to be, let him have a good game with the Knicks. They're absolutely going to be Bulls fans. See, we could have had Ousmane Deng, we could have had Jeremy Sochan, we could have had Rob Dillingham, and it's going to be a lot of talking Bulls fans off the cliff this summer. I could tell that a lot. Shea had asked for a crisis hotline maybe at some point this weekend, and I could tell it may be time for one. It may be time for one. And so we'll see if I do that over this weekend. We'll see. My kids come first on the weekends, so we have downtime. What me and the kids are doing, maybe I'll do a crisis hotline, put that on. But no Jeremy Sochan for the Bulls. But I do want to talk about this. The one move that the Chicago Bulls that look like it's working for them so far is the Kevin Huerter trade. And for Kevin Huerter, you got back basically Jaden Ivey, while not looking like himself yet and what he was prior to his injury, it still offers more upside than what Kevin Huerter was, a player that clearly probably wasn't part of your future. Now, do I think that you could have re-signed Kevin Huerter and left him on your bench? Yeah, there's a possibility for that. But as it stands right now, I'll tell you this, Kevin Huerter is not doing what the Detroit Pistons had hoped that they'd be getting out of Kevin Huerter right now. And part of that's on them, right? Kevin Huerter, before coming to the Chicago Bulls, I want to be clear here, he had 2 straight seasons of his worst three-point shooting seasons of his career. He then, after the trade to the Chicago Bulls, the rest of that season, shot the 3-ball amazingly well. He shot the 3-ball last year after the trade, 37% from the field. He was shooting the ball 30% from the field before that, right? And so then you look at this season, he was shooting the ball 31% from the field for the Chicago Bulls before the trade. Since going to Detroit, he's shooting the ball 11% from the three-point line. 11%. He's only averaging 4 points per game for that Detroit Pistons team over 4 games. And so say what you will about Jaden Ivey, but even Jaden Ivey has been better than that. And then we also know the play with Jaden Ivey isn't just about this season. Theoretically, it's also about seeing what he can bring you next season as a restricted free agent. You can probably get him cheap. And if he can get back to what he was and how he looked before the injury. But hey, say what you will, Jaden Ivey for the Bulls, out of 4 games, he's averaging 11 points, shooting the ball 41% from the field and 38% from 3 with 4 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 steals per game. Jaden Ivey, while not anywhere close to what he was his last season, the last full season in Detroit before the injury, which he only played 30 games that season, averaging almost 18 points per game. He is a player that is taking the more minutes. Hopefully he's building in confidence in that knee. You can see clearly he's still not very confident in that leg, but that's what happens when you have 2 major injuries to 2 major surgeries to one leg in the span of 12 months. So, we'll see if Jaden Ivey can get. I know a lot of Bulls fans are already writing off Jaden Ivey long term. I hope that he proves that wrong. I can't blame you guys. Like I said, I am no longer attacking pessimist Bulls fans. Well, where we are right now, all you guys are valid, and we'll see how that continues to develop for this team. But I think as it stands right now, even with the Bulls moving out of the play-in, Jaden Ivey's still the better long-term bet right now because Kevin Huerter is struggling right now in Detroit. Maybe it's the water. With that said, I want to talk about this. The Bulls are firmly out of the play-in position as it stands right now going into the All-Star break. Now, on tomorrow's episode, I'm going to be discussing, it's a mailbag episode, but I always open with the topic. I will be talking about what this Bulls team needs to do after the trade deadline. I keep saying trade deadline. After the All-Star break, I'll be talking about what I want to see from this Bulls team after the All-Star break. But where things stand right now, the Bulls are out of the play-in. And that is the spot where you have the Atlanta Hawks, which are 1.5 games above the Chicago Bulls in the standings. And then you have the Milwaukee Bucks, which have now tied the Chicago Bulls in the standings as far as per win percentage. And so they're right there with the Bulls. And the Milwaukee Bucks, who won 2 in a row, and they're saying that Giannis Antetokounmpo is going to come back, there's a good chance that the Bulls are going to move from the 11th seed where they are right now down to the 12th seed. So the Bulls are looking like, and I always want to leave in the caveat there of that's what it appears right now. We got to see what Josh Giddey, Trey Jones, Jalen Smith, when these guys get back on the court for the Chicago Bulls, what then do we look like? Because, people are still holding out that, hey, it could very well change there. But it does seem like the Bulls, if their goal is prioritizing draft, more a higher chance to move up the lottery, that they're exceeding in that, right? And so as it is right now, the Bulls aren't in the 9th seed. They aren't in the 10th seed. We aren't in the spot where we've said, hello, my old friend, for so long. The Bulls right now, they're 7-14 over the last 21 games. They've lost 9 of their last 10 games as well. The Bulls look like a team that is absolutely taking the rest of the way this season, right? And so now, with that, the Bulls are 11 games in the 11th spot in the Eastern Conference after being, 9th before I think all this losing recently happened and stuff like that. So it does feel like the Bulls are getting into a spot right now to where draft position is going to be the focus. The Charlotte Hornets are well above. They're 2 games ahead of the Chicago Bulls. The Atlanta Hawks are there 1.5 games ahead of the Chicago Bulls. So, this is where it is. And this is where it looks like this season is going to ultimately finish for the Chicago Bulls team is that they are going to be bad the rest of this way. Now, I think even in Josh Giddey and Trey Jones' return, that you're probably going to see, it just looks like we're operating the offense better, and it's probably going to be better for development here over the last part of the season. I said on yesterday's episode, the Bulls aren't even developing at this point in time. They're not even doing that well. But you have more structure of your team when you get those guys back. I don't know how much winning the Bulls are going to do over that time, But when you look at Rob Dillingham, Jaden Ivey, right, at this point, you want to kind of really evaluate those players. I even like I said, I think you're going to keep one of Anthony Simons and Colin Sexton as well. I don't think you're going to let both those guys go unless they both want to go. They're unrestricted free agents, so they cannot come back, right? And so with the Bulls right now coming back after this with the fourth toughest schedule remaining in the NBA after the All-Star break, it looks like the finish to the season is going to be tough. It's going to be a very tough finish to the season, but here's where the Bulls can benefit from that. SB Nation actually had their first mock draft. Ricky O'Donnell did that mock draft. Y'all know how I feel about Ricky O'Donnell. I think he's a crybaby. I don't like him. I hate his voice, and his face looks stupid. But outside of that, Ricky O'Donnell of SB Nation did release his first mock draft of the season. And you go over there and look at it. I would implore everybody to go over there and read it, right? And he has the Bulls currently right now. They're in the 10th spot. But in that mock draft, they actually leaped up to number 4. And they missed out on Darren Peterson, Cam Boozer, AJ DiBasata. They missed out on those guys. But he did have them drafting Caleb Wilson in the mock draft. And that's kind of what the Bulls are hoping is going to happen here, right? Like, you're hoping that you're going to get some luck. And when you look at it, teams have jumped that have been right outside, where you expect the best odds at, have actually jumped into the lottery pretty well. Now, Bulls fans, we're not used to luck. Luck usually doesn't break our way. We're not used to that. But Caleb Wilson would offer such a perfect player for the Chicago Bulls. And when you talk about somebody who can pair with Matas Buzelis and that, like, talk about your 3 and your 4, he's averaging 19.8 points, 9 rebounds, 2.7 assists, 1.5 steals, 1.4 blocks per game. Listen, we've talked about rim protection, and I've talked about how at the 3 and the 4, with Matas being at the 3, Jalen Smith has been at the 4. In those minutes, the Chicago Bulls have been one of the best rim protecting teams in the league when those guys play together. You could be finding the long-term version of that with Caleb Wilson and Matas Buzelis. And don't forget, you'd also have Noah Essengate backing either of those guys up. So if Noah actually works out too, you would have a potential 3-headed monster of forwards that both fit with Josh Giddey. You talk about the transition offense, Caleb Wilson's ability to shoot the 3, how Matas is growing as a 3-point shooter. I want to see Matas attack the rim a little bit more. But I think when you look at Caleb Wilson and doing that, that's a good spot. Now, one of the knocks on that is that Caleb Wilson is an excellent mid-range shooter. Is Billy Donovan going to let him take the mid-range shot? That's where you have to question that at, right? Like, because Billy Donovan not wanting Matas. This is why I said I don't want Billy Donovan touching the development of any of these players if we get lucky. I don't want Billy Donovan touching the development of these players. Now, is AK listening to me? Fuck no. AK don't give a shit about that. It does not seem like. But this is why I look at it and I say, there's no way in hell I want Billy Donovan. Billy, don't take mid-range shots. Billy Donovan, if you're a good catch-and-shoot player, I'm not running catch-and-shoot opportunities for you. I don't want Billy Donovan touching potentially the development of a Caleb Wilson. The question then becomes about, the Bulls have to get in the top 4 for that. We're going to start our own draft coverage here shortly, but Caleb Wilson will be an amazing prospect. And like I said, if the Bulls land anywhere in that top 4 to 5, I don't think you can worry about position personally. Even if it's Darren Peterson, who's a point guard / shooting guard, a shooting guard / point guard. I think shooting guard comes first with him. I don't think you can worry about that. I just don't think that you can. I think that you have to go in and take the best player available, taking floor into consideration, finally AK, but take the best player that's available there for you. Don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. So we'll see what the Bulls are going to do with this one, man. We'll see how it ends up shaking out for them overall. But I tell you what, if the Bulls get lucky enough to get into the top 4, all I can say is this. That would be such a string of uncharacteristic luck for a fan base that is just not used to it. Now, more likely than not, the Bulls are going to stay at number 10, with maybe a slight spot to drop back to number 11. That's probably what would happen more with the Bulls if they drop back to 11 because, again, it's the Chicago Bulls. But the question that you have to ask there, too, is like with Caleb Williams' hand injury, is he going to slip at all in the draft? I don't think so. I don't think Caleb Wilson goes lower than 5. And that's just depending on draft order. Like, for example, the Milwaukee Bucks get in the top 4 and Boozer, Peterson, and AJ are off the board. I think they take Kingston Fleming, personally, the point guard there, because they need that type of point guard there. But I think Caleb Wilson is going in the top 5 one way or another. So the Bulls would have to get into the top 5 to get him. But we'll be talking about our own draft prospects coming up here. I want to give it a second. We'll probably hold off until probably March to start that, just to try to look at, all right, how do the Bulls actually look once Josh Giddey and Trey Jones come back? And we'll take a look at that. But that leads me to the parting question that I want to leave you guys on this episode before I get out of here. What would need to happen, right? what would need to happen between the end of this season and the beginning of next season for you to feel like what the Bulls did at this trade deadline was the right move? Not necessarily saying they won every trade, because they didn't. I don't think there's any way you're going to be able to repaint it. And even if Rob Dillingham turns into like a 15-point per game scorer as a point guard, I still don't think you win the IO trade. That's my personal opinion. But what needs to happen for you to look at the decision that was made at this trade deadline being the right decision? Is it if the Bulls luck and they do get a top 4 pick because they did drop out of that play-in? Do you look at that as the win? Is it they land a big restricted or unrestricted free agent in the offseason? Do you look at that as a win then? For me personally, I look at it this way. Whatever puts us back on the path of being in the playoffs. If the Bulls, whether through a mix of draft, signing, and development, go next season that they are actually competing for a playoff spot, then I would look at it and say, all right, cool. Yeah, the last year's trade deadline sucked ass, but look at where we are now. And that's the type of long-term thing that's very dangerous to do with AK, because every time you look at stuff long-term with him, it ends up not working out. But question for you guys, especially with the mailbag tomorrow, so I want to hear from you guys on this one. You can text, preferably leave a voicemail. You can even send in a video to the email, but I want to hear from you guys. Where will the Bulls need to be this time next year for you to look at as the trade deadline moves to be the right decision by AK? Let me know what you guys think on that. At the end of the day, Bulls fans, it comes down to one thing, right? And that's execution. Flexibility, it means nothing if you don't hit in the draft. Cap space, it means nothing if you don't hit in free agency. So I got to ask you guys, what would make it worth it? And that goes back to the question, what would make it all worth it looking at this time around next season? Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. Go ahead and follow us at Bull Central Pod on every social media platform that we happen to be on. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. And like I like to end every episode on, stay safe, go Bulls, and always see red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.